Stephen Friedman, a senior principal at Marsh Capital and former partner at Goldman Sachs, who later became George W. Bush's top economic advisor. Friedman was also a member of the Brookings Institution, the Bilderberg Group, the Foreign Intelligence Advisory Board, and the board at In-Q-Tel. In another interesting coincidence, Friedman belonged through Cornell University to a secret society called Quill and Dagger, the membership of which includes Paul Wolfowitz, Sandy Berger, and Stephen Hadley. Wolfowitz, the neocon Deputy Secretary of Defense in the Bush administration, was the author in 1992 of the Wolfowitz Doctrine of preemptive warfare. He also made comments about a surprise-like Pearl Harbor months before 9/11 and met with Pakistani ISI General Mahmoud Ahmed in the week before 9/11.
The PNAC letter to President Clinton in 1998, Paul Wolfowitz wrote, "The policy of containment of Saddam Hussein has been steadily eroding over the past several months. As recent events has demonstrated, we can no longer depend on our partners in the Gulf War Coalition to continue to uphold sanctions or punish Saddam when he blocks or invades UN inspectors. Our ability to ensure that Saddam Hussein is not producing weapons of mass destruction therefore has substantially diminished. Even if full inspections were eventually to resume, which now seems highly unlikely, experience has shown that it is difficult, if not impossible, to monitor Iraq's chemical and biological production. The lengthy period during which the inspectors have been unable to enter many Iraqi facilities has made it even less likely that they will be able to uncover all of Saddam's secrets. As a result, in the not-too-distant future, remember this is 1998, in the not-too-distant future, we will be unable to determine with any reasonable level of confidence whether Iraq does or does not possess such weapons." Notice how he assumes that he has them and that they are secrets and that they're just unable to find them now. He's starting with a conclusion and supporting it with scare tactics. They even use the same catchphrases. Weapons of mass destruction. Because it's not like the U.S. has or sells any of those. And avoiding inspectors. Of course, Paul Wolfowitz never offered any evidence for the claims he was making, and he would flip-flop his rationales for a war in Iraq so long as a war in Iraq happened. And when he was finally cornered and questioned about it, his only way out, of course, was to evoke 9/11 and hope that by repeating 9/11 enough times there would be enough emotional smoke in the room for him to worm away and not have to answer.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Welcome, gentlemen. As you can see, a lot of the questions here relate to the high cost of the war, not only in resources but in human lives, of course. And I'd like to get at the key question of what we're really doing there. And, of course, in the months leading up to the war, there was a steady drumbeat of weapons of mass destruction, weapons of mass destruction, weapons of mass destruction. And Secretary Wolfowitz, in your almost hour-long testimony here this morning, only once did you mention weapons of mass destruction, and that was an ad lib. I don't think it's in any of your written testimony. So now we're in this endeavor, huge cost not only in resources but in lives. So I'll ask the question, Secretary Wolfowitz, give you a chance. What are we doing there?
Senator Chafee, what we have done there is to remove a regime that was a threat to the United States. We've said all along, if you go back to Secretary Powell's presentation to the United Nations, all three of those concerns were stated very clearly. The concern about weapons of mass destruction, the concern about Saddam's links to terrorism, which are there, not as clear as the case on weapons
Secretary,
of mass destruction.
just interrupt. I'm a cynic. So when you make these assertions, give some proof. A threat to the United States, how?
I'd suggest go back and read, and if you want to give me an hour, we can have a different kind of hearing. But if you go back and read Secretary Powell's testimony, it is very clear. And it is the concern that the combination of weapons of mass destruction and terrorists.
But the claims were, he asked, what's the proof for those claims? We all know what Powell said. We all know what the claims were. Powell restated the stuff that you said, and you're a liar. Where's the proof for weapons of mass destruction and links to terrorism? All Wolfowitz can do is say, well, Colin Powell said it too. And, of course, 9/11, 9/11, 9/11.
Poses a kind of threat which maybe 10 years ago we would have thought we could live with. And I would have said 10 years ago my whole view about Iraq would have been very different. 10 years ago I would have said Iraq, as terrible as it is a problem of the Iraqi people. I said all along I believe we should have given those people more help in getting rid of that tyrant. But September 11th put it in a different light, and taking on that tyrant forcefully meant In fact, if anything, that we had to take that threat more seriously. So all three of those concerns are stated in Secretary Powell's testimony. I talked about the mistreatment of the people.
Let me interrupt because my time is limited, unfortunately. You just said that this is, that 10 years ago you wouldn't have agreed to a regime change. However, in 1998, you as a member of the New American Century sent a letter to President Clinton.
I said something different.
Well, no, wait a sec. You were saying we're seeing it in the light of September 11th. That's just not true. You've been advocating for regime change all through the late 90s. And in this letter,
Can I explain? There's a very clear
strategy
difference.
should aim, above all, this is 1998, the strategy should aim, above all, at the removal of Saddam Hussein's regime from power. You signed that letter.
Senator, there's a very big difference. I was very clear. I don't know if it's in that letter, but elsewhere, I never thought before September 11th that we should use tens of thousands of American troops to do the job for the Iraqis. I never thought we should go to Baghdad, even at the end of the Gulf War, when I thought we should have done some other things we didn't do. I thought up until September 11th that our job was to help the Iraqi people. I think the mistake we made in 1991 was they rose up against Saddam and they got no help from us. September 11th changed the stakes, in my view, for the United States and made it a different matter in terms of using American troops. The end is the same, but you're not distinguishing the means, and the means are absolutely crucial. Putting American troops' lives at stake is something that we do when our security is threatened. Our security was threatened. The troops out there, I think, understand that it is threatened. I think they understand that they're part of fighting the war on terrorism as we go on today, and that is important.
Well, I'll just finish up by saying I really resent when witnesses talk that this is in the light of September 11th when the evidence is to the contrary.
Senator, you're misrepresenting what I said in that letter.
You have over and over again through the late 90s urged regime change in Iraq.
Can I try again then, since I believe you're not representing my views properly? It is true. I thought from the end of the Gulf War up until September 11th of 2001 that it was important for the United States to help Iraqis get rid of that regime, and that is a policy of regime change. But I did not believe that it was either necessary or justified to use large-scale American military forces to do that job. At the end of the Gulf War, all it would have taken was a minimum application of U.S. air power and some of the artillery that were sitting on the south bank of the Euphrates River. September 11th changed the stakes for us, in my view, dramatically, and it changed the whole way of looking at an uncertain but still disturbing threat of the combination of weapons of mass destruction and terrorism.
Berger, the national security advisor to President Clinton, was later caught stealing documents from the 9/11 Commission investigation. Berger was also the boss of White House counterterrorism czar Richard Clarke, and together with Hadley, who was Condoleezza Rice's deputy, was responsible for delaying or obstructing Clarke's plans to stop al-Qaeda in January of 2001.